Let's go back to Iraq. I'm Steve Green, and this week I'm hosting a three-part trifecta triple on America's reluctant return to Iraq, a country where we've been waging war on and off, can you believe this, for nearly a quarter century now. In part two of the series, we'll look at the broader war in the Middle East, and part three is all about the domestic politics. Today, though, I want you to get a better look at the newest player in that fractured country, the new Caliphate, the Islamic State. So let's bring on Bill Whittle and Scott Ott and do just that. All right, gents, the Islamic State is a product of the Syrian civil war, an Al-Qaeda offshoot so terrible and vicious that Al-Qaeda disowned them. They've since branched out and taken over huge swaths of Iraq and Kurdistan and have Baghdad nearly surrounded. Gentlemen, to get an idea of why Al-Qaeda disowned the so-called Caliphate, look no further than this story from The Guardian, that the Islamic State has, and this is a quote, shattered the ancient ties that bound Iraq's minorities. IS forces are killing or enslaving anybody who isn't their brand of Sunni Muslim, anybody they can get their hands on. Iraqi Christians are some of the earliest Christian peoples anywhere in the world, and, well, the Caliphate is determined to make them purely a thing of the past. Bill, the White House wants a negotiated settlement. What's half a loaf come to in the Islamic State?
Well, first of all, none of this murder would be happening if the White House could perform a negotiated settlement. All of these problems are a result of their inability to execute a very simple status of forces agreement several years ago. Same kind of thing that keeps U.S. troops keeping the peace in Germany after 70 years. In Korea after 65 years is a pretty simple treaty to negotiate, and the Obama administration bungled it a couple years ago. Once it became clear that the United States was not going to stay in Iraq, this became inevitable. I have to tell you one thing about this ISIS thing, Steve, or two things really I think that are important.
Yeah.
First of all, you have to understand that we've never had this discussion really seriously in this country. President Bush, who I admired quite a bit for his going on the offensive against this latest enemy of freedom, basically called it a war on terror, but everybody knows that doesn't make sense. Terrorism is a strategy. It's like declaring you have a war on submarines. Whose submarines? Isn't that a little more important? So the issue is really twofold. Number one, we have to understand that we're at war with Islamic jihadists and that they are not bound by nationalities. It's not a question of us being at war with Syria or not being at war with Syria. It's all part of the same ideology, and national boundaries don't make any difference. So to say that we don't fight them in Syria, but we do fight them in Iraq is nonsense. It's ridiculous. And the second thing I want to say about this latest outbreak of violence on the part of these Islamist murderers, who are so nasty and so vile that Al-Qaeda disowns them. Al-Qaeda. The first thought that flew into my mind during your introduction is this. We're facing a very serious issue today with killer bugs, with antibiotic-resistant germs. And the thought that flew into my head was this. If you allow the most virulent, the most violent, the most ruthless of these fighters to survive in Libya and Syria and everywhere else, they will breed a super colony of particularly vicious and violent people. And this is the price you pay for not finishing what you start. And it's also the price you pay for making it clear through endless signals on the part of the Obama administration that we will tolerate anything and not go to war and actually kill these guys the way we did in 2003 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 and 8 under any circumstances. Those are the conditions that allow this form of bacteria to thrive again.
Now, Bill, I'm glad you brought that up because it really helps segue into my next question. Over in the Islamic State's part of Syria, a picture showed up on Twitter of a young boy believed to be the son of an Australian jihadi named Khalid Sharoof, proudly holding a severed head. Now, this one gets me personally. The kid's blue shirt, the cute shorts. Except for that severed head, that could be my 8-year-old son right there in that photo. This one hurts, folks. Now, Scott, I've been opposed to American involvement in the Syrian civil war, but when you look at a picture like that, should we have taken sides early and forcefully back in 2011?
Well, first of all, I take issue with your setup for that question. That could not be your son.
Well said.
The system that we have in this country would not allow that to be your son. You would not allow that to be your son. Those kinds of children are bred and poisoned from an early age to get to the point where they can hold up a severed head as if it were a teddy bear or a Rockenbach figure.
Well said.
So
He's
that
just
doesn't
dressed like
happen
your son.
here, and for a very good reason. Yes, externally, and that's the thing. This is the moral equivalency that the Obama administration has fallen into, and so many people on the left, that we should treat these people because they are, you know, bipeds that walk erect, that have a central nervous system, as if they were the same as us. When we hear this talk from the Secretary of State of the United States or from the President of the United States that, well, these people have to get together and work out their differences, this is absurdity that a war that's been going on for hundreds and hundreds of years is suddenly going to be solved because, you know, the moral imperative has been laid down by Secretary of State Kerry. This doesn't happen in the United States of America for a very good reason, and anybody who behaves that way in the United States of America is anathema and is punished for it. We need to get serious about what these people are doing. And that scare talk years ago, oh, they're going to form a caliphate. You know, Glenn Beck was raving. He was crazy. And now they formed a caliphate, and they are mowing down everything in their way.
Steve, can I just add one thing to that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because that picture's pretty powerful. I'm going to develop this idea a little further downstream, but I just want to get it out here right now. I just want to put a marker down. If somebody invaded my country, or if I had a political stake, or I thought I was being oppressed, or whatever the case may be, I'd go and fight them, and I'd be willing probably to go and die fighting them. But if it ever came to the point where my ideology assumed the kind of role where I was ready to strap a bomb onto my children and send them out to kill those people, I'd surrender. I'd surrender before I do that. I don't care how bad the oppression is. I don't care what the ideology is. If it comes to the point where I'm turning my children into the kind of little killbots that can hold up a human head, it's time for me to surrender. Because the entire reason we go and fight and die for what we believe in is to protect our children, is to give them some kind of hope and some kind of future. So while I'd be willing to fight and give my life against foreign oppressors, if the foreign oppression meant that I had to turn my children into suicide bombers, I'd surrender before I'd let that happen.
All right. All right, folks, you know, I'd like to finish with a question I asked on vodkapundit.com on Monday, but never got a good answer. Now, Bill has answered the question in one way, but I don't think it's the answer I'm really looking for. So maybe you can help us out in the comments. It's been noted since at least Pearl Harbor that the wars which begin with surprise attacks, those wars end badly. And the mushroom clouds over Hiroshima and Nagasaki, well, they lend credence to that notion. So my question is, wars featuring children, such as that boy, how do those wars end? For Scott Ott and Bill Whittle, I'm Steve Green. Stick around for part 2 right here on PJTV.